Hey guys, it's Gwen. Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you are returning. I have another Valentine DIY video for you that I wanted to share before Valentine rolls around. It's just around the corner. I thought I'd share some really fun and cute DIYs using items that I already had in my stash. These items and supplies are easily available at Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby, wherever you can find crafty items. A lot of things like this vintage looking music sheet was from a thrift store, and this lace here is from Dollar Tree. All I did to create like that vintage antique look was I soaked it in some coffee and I created a vintage style paper as well as the lace trim. I didn't want it to be too white or too new looking. I'm taking one of these picture frames from the Dollar Tree, which I've had in my stash for a few years. As you can see, it comes with that galvanized sign that says love, which I will be incorporating into this DIY. I'm taking this music sheet here, and first thing I'm doing is just sort of cutting out the shape of the frame, because my initial thought was to use the paper as a background, but you will see that I end up switching gears and I end up going in a different direction. I didn't want the music sheet to just be in the background of this sign here. Instead, I'm gonna use that music sheet to decoupage on top of that little wood heart cutout that came from Dollar Tree. It's like one of those little chunky wood signs or decor pieces that they carry. I'm also just sort of going brainstorming, if you will, of what exactly I wanted to do here. You'll see that throughout the video, I might kind of go back and forth on deciding on what I want to do. And that's just me thinking. After I use a glue stick to glue down that piece of paper, I then went in with a sanding sponge and just filed off the excess paper, making sure to go opposite direction, or actually in the same direction as the paper, so as not to tear or lift any of that paper. And then I went on to distressing the outside of this heart just so it doesn't look super new. I used some antique Waverly wax and use a sponge brush, and then I'm just going to use a wet wipe to sort of spread and remove some of that excess wax. I tried to do the same thing with the frame because, as you could tell, the frame is very white. And with this type of frame, it's not wood, it's made of like some sort of plastic, so it doesn't take paint very well. I tried using this ink pad here. It's a Stays-On ink pad in the brown color, just sort of rubbing across all of the outer edges of that frame, hoping that it would give me that distressed look instead of using paint. But after wiping back, the excess with a wet wipe, I didn't really like the outcome. So you'll see that I go back in later with some antique Waverly wax. I'm taking this lace here that I dyed, coffee stained, whatever you want to call it. I'm just going to size out or measure the length that I need for my pieces, and then just use that first piece of lace to use as a template and cut out the remaining pieces, just so that I can use it in this fashion here, where I will be gluing or attaching all of these lace pieces to the background of the sign using some tacky glue. It's the Aleene's tacky glue, and I like this look a lot better than my initial thought, which was to use the music sheet for the background. I knew I wanted to incorporate some lace in this DIY because essentially I was going more for like a vintage, shabby chic, sort of like an antique looking style, probably more vintage. And I thought that by adding some lace and staining it to make it look old would definitely achieve that look. So as I mentioned, I used some tacky glue just to hold down all of those lace pieces to the background, and already this is taking shape and starting to look like my vision. And after I finish gluing all these lace pieces down, I'm going to get to working or continue working on that heart, I'm just going to hot glue it down to the center of that frame. And I went back and forth on deciding if I wanted to do a pop of color on here to do more of a traditional Valentine's, and that's why I pulled out that pink heart shape right there that you see in the corner, because I kind of went back and forth deciding, do I want a pop of pink color in here to make it more of a traditional Valentine decor, or do I want to keep it vintage? I decided against using that colorful heart. Instead, I used the galvanized word piece that came inside this frame, just hot glued that down to the center of the heart. I thought that added a nice touch. And I took some of this seam binding ribbon. It's the Martha Stewart brand. Any ribbon will do. And it just made a simple shoestring bow and hot glued that to the top. And that was it for this first DIY. I love how this came out. Super cute, shabby chic, very vintage vibes. Let me know what you think. So moving right along to DIY number 2, I'm taking yet another frame from the Dollar Tree. This is one of those frame with a stand, and it has a little clip up top that can hold a photo. First things first, I had to remove the ribbon that came with this frame here. I didn't want to use that style of ribbon, so it was super easy to remove that piece there just using my heat gun. And then the next thing I did was just painted up the outer frame using plaster, or was this plaster or is this white? I believe this is Snow White chalk paint by Waverly. And I just wanted to give this more of a shabby chic look, more brighter. And so that's why I decided to use this white chalk paint. And this one had like those little like tacks or like little nails or what have you around the frame, and by painting it white, it just sort of gives it like a different look. And I also made sure to paint the stand a coordinating color and just wanted everything to be the same. And after painting everything white, I decided, you know, I'm gonna go ahead and paint up that sort of burlap backing to this frame in this champagne pink color. This is by the Dixie Belle brand, and I thought that it would just transform the look and make everything look more bright and fresh, and again lean more towards the shabby chic look. And I really like this pale pink color here. I think it's a nice pink tone without being too bright or loud. It's very muted, and you know, it can work well in everyday decor if you decorate with more of a shabby chic French farmhouse, French country look. And I think it just coordinates well overall with the white frame. So after painting several coats to the burlap, because it did soak it up quite a bit, I did use a heat gun just to ensure that this was completely dry before I moved on to the next step. I found these little foam conversation hearts in my stash. I'm not exactly sure where this came from originally, but I know that I've had it for quite some time. I decided to make use of this since I thought it was cute. It's not necessarily like all the colors that I would essentially use, but you know, I might as well just use up what I have. So I went ahead and started arranging all of the hearts in the order that I wanted them to lay, because a lot of them were repetitive. They said the same message. So unfortunately, I didn't have much to choose from, and I just wanted to make sure I didn't have the same like phrases side by side or the same color side by side. So after getting it arranged in the way I wanted, I just took the paper backing off because these are adhesive, and I didn't use any additional hot glue. I just attached that to the frame, and that was pretty much it. I'm just showing you how I displayed it using some note cards that I had on hand that were appropriate for Valentine's. I also took this gingham ribbon. It's a pink and white ribbon, made a simple bow and not really dovetail. I just cut the tails at an angle, and voila, that was it for this DIY. Super easy and super fun, and I love how it came out. Hope you guys are enjoying this video, and as always, I would appreciate a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please consider subscribing. Moving right along to DIY number 3, this one is yet another super easy project that came together in minutes. I took 2 of these Dollar Tree decor signs, One says love, it's a metal sign, and it comes in this gold color. And the other one is just a wood like plank sign with a beaded handle. And these just worked so well together. They were essentially like the same size. So layering that metal piece on top of that plank sign right there, it was perfect. It was like match made in heaven, so to speak. So I wanted to add some interesting background, so I took more of my vintage coffee stained music sheets here. I traced out the size or the shape of that, what is it? No, not octagon. It's more of like a hexagon shape. And I just used my fingernail to sort of glide along the edges to give me a general idea of where I should cut. But I did mess up on one of them, ended up cutting it a little too small. So I used my scrap pieces just to trace out another piece, and that was a super easy fix. I don't need to be very careful with this because it's essentially going to be rustic, vintage, distressed, all the good stuff. So no need for accuracy here. I'm not caring whether those papers fit snug or were exact to the shape of those planks. Again, this is more of a rustic piece. So it worked out well. I love how the coffee stain comes through. It definitely adds a touch of rustic and vintage vibe to this decor. I'm also using one of those paper roses from my stash. I hot glued down this metal piece to that wood decor and then hot glued this paper flower. I had other colors to choose from, but I thought keeping it neutral, this would be the perfect option. And the last bit of embellishment I added were a stack of lace and trim that I just cut into strips and then stacked them and then use a piece of twine just to attach all the pieces together and then hot glue that down to the top center of the sign. And that was pretty much it for this DIY. I totally love how this one came out. It's super simple, simple elegance, super cute, romantic, vintage, shabby chic. Just all the things that I love in a decor. And I hope you guys like it too. So that wraps up this DIY. I really love how this one came out. Please leave me a heart emoji if you are still here and let me know what you think in the comments. Moving right along to DIY number 4. This one is a super simple DIY. All I did was took one of these beaded heart wreaths from the Dollar Tree. I didn't even paint it or anything. I kept it the unfinished wood. And I took an assortment of different ribbons and lace trim and things like that that I had in my stash. All of these essentially were from either Hobby Lobby or Dollar Tree, or I might have had already from before. But all I'm doing here is just taking one piece of ribbon or lace ribbon, and then I'm going to go ahead and cut it, and then just to get an idea of how long I want my pieces to be. And then I just use that to cut out the rest of my pieces. And I could have totally made this easy on myself just by pre-cutting all of my strips of ribbon and lace ahead of time so that all I needed to do was tie each of these ribbon trims to the wreath. But of course, sometimes I do things the hard way, and I was just sort of cutting as I was tying them. I might have been cutting like 5 or 6 at a time and then proceeding to tie them. So of course, my advice is that you should definitely cut all of your ribbon pieces ahead of time and then do the tying, because it's just going to make things go smoothly and everything is just going to go a lot faster. So I'll let you go ahead and watch what I'm doing here. It's just basically tying each of the ribbon pieces, making sure to spread out the colors so that I didn't have the same style of ribbon or the same color side by side. I wanted to make sure everything was spread out evenly so that it looked better. So I'll let you go ahead and watch this part here, and then I'll jump back on in a minute. Okay, now that all the ribbons were attached to the wood frame or the wood wreath, I created a hanger using some pink satin seam binding, and all I did was just create a loop and then attach the tails to the dip of that heart, to the, you know, where the heart dips. Just double knotted it, and that will create a hanger. And then the last bit of embellishment I added was a simple crochet ribbon bow that I made, and added a cute little green button down the middle. That was pretty much it for this DIY. I think it came out super sweet and I adore it. I hope you guys like this idea. Moving right along to DIY number 5, I'm using another one of Dollar Tree's picture frames. I believe they carry this one pretty regularly, but as always, I've had mine for quite some time. First thing I did was remove the paper backing. That was really hard to remove, so I just used a sanding sponge to just sand off the rest, and as you can tell, there was still some paper left behind, but it didn't really bother me since I was going to be painting over this. I used the color Plaster by Waverly. It's a chalk paint, and just gonna give this a good few coats to the whole entire thing, including the base. Oh, and I did forget to mention that little metal frame right there. It does come out, so it's held on by a little screw, so I did have to remove that ahead of time before I started sanding and painting. I'm taking these little mini hearts that are from the Dollar Tree and using some antique Waverly wax and a wet wipe. I'm just going to go ahead and stain these up just to make them more stained and rustic looking. It's just going to add more contrast against that plaster chalk paint. I could have left it the original, you know, natural wood color, but I figured it would, you know, be a nice contrast to this white, the really bright background here. I'm using that same wet wipe that I used to stain the hearts and just rub that across the frame. And it was the perfect amount of antique wax just to get this whole piece looking grungy and, you know, more antique or vintage looking. Next up, I was going to start attaching that metal frame back to this picture frame. And again, they're just held on by little screws. I took these little heart wood cutouts. They're also from Dollar Tree. And I used pink and red. And then I used 2 that were unfinished. And with the unfinished ones, I used the same antique Waverly wax to stain those up just to coordinate with the mini hearts that I'm going to be attaching to the top, and also to add some contrast. And I just laid them down in this sort of angled off-centered fashion. I took these like Scrabble sticker looking tiles, and honestly, I don't remember where I got this from, but I thought this would be a really nice addition to this project. They're adhesive backing, they're little stickers, and they're kind of made of cardboard, and I just chose the letters to spell out the word love. I thought that would be really cute to add to the bottom of this frame, just to, you know, make it look complete. I removed the backing and then added a little dab of hot glue just to ensure that this stays in place, since I'm not really sure how well the adhesive will stick onto this painted wood. And I didn't want this to, you know, to fall apart come undone. So I just continued attaching all of those Scrabble tile pieces. And again, these are not like the authentic Scrabble tiles, they're just stickers made of cardboard, but super cute. I went ahead and started placing all my hearts across the top, and I was trying to do a dry fit as always. I wanted to create some sort of like a banner look, so I took a piece of this jute twine, but it's like an off-white color. This is from Hobby Lobby. I taped down the twine across the frame just so it stays in place, and that way I can put all of the heart pieces on top of it, and I would know exactly how long the string should be hanging, you know, so it doesn't like cover up the picture that I place in here. I started to hot glue all of my heart pieces down on top of the twine, and then you'll see after I complete this part, I just add additional hot glue just to secure it down into place in the areas where it looked like it was, you know, not fully secure. So this one is a really easy DIY, really easy updo of a Dollar Tree frame. So Dollar Tree carries so many items in their crafters square section, or like decorative section, like frames and things like that. And if you don't like the look of it, it's so easy to change it up and make it fit into your own decor. I then trimmed off the excess twine in the corners, and I believe that was pretty much it for this project. And the pops of red and pink were just the right amount of color. Moving on to DIY number 6, I am using more Dollar Tree things. These little picture frame and little signs here that says I love you, little envelopes. Those are all from Dollar Tree. The paper came from Hobby Lobby in a pack of paper, Valentine paper that I grabbed during their clearance last year. And I just grabbed or picked out this really pretty pink design. I didn't want it to be too busy because I was going to be adding things to this, and I didn't want the design to compete with the things I was going to be placing to it. I first took some Snow White chalk paint, and I started painting up these little letters. At first, I wasn't exactly sure what I wanted to do with this. So I thought, let's start with a base coat, and that's why I started painting it in this white color. And just giving it that one coat of paint allowed for that design to still come through at the bottom, which did help out in terms of the next step, because I will be taking some paint markers and I'm going to be drawing in like the outline of the envelope. The only thing I didn't particularly want to show was the wording. Although on one of them I did emphasize the I love you in there, but for the other two I wrote different words. But you'll see that here shortly. I chose the colors that I had in this pack of paint markers that I wanted to use. So one was like this purple color. I also chose red and white, although the white I didn't really use much because I just didn't have a need for it. So all I did here was just trace out the outline of the envelope that you can still see through the paint, and I just emphasize those areas. And at this point I was still unsure exactly where I was going with this look. Next thing I did was I took that red paint marker and essentially did the same thing, although I colored opposite areas of that envelope from the first one. Just wanted to make them look slightly different. Now that I've colored in the areas that I wanted to add color to, I took a Sharpie, a black Sharpie, and then I started to trace along the areas where I traced around the envelope. And I just wanted to sort of give it more of a shadow look, I guess. I added the love you word back to one of these, as I mentioned earlier. And then for the other two, I'm just going to write something completely different. And I just kept playing around with the look of this until I was completely happy. So this was definitely a trial and error situation where I didn't really know going in exactly what I wanted to do, but it sort of just started to, come to me as I progressed into it. I took the next color, it's this gold color paint marker, and just did the same thing as I did with the first two. I really didn't have a lot of options in this paint marker pack that lean more towards like the Valentine colors or anything. So that's why I went with this gold here. I figured, gold works well for Valentine's as well. And, it is a nice neutral. So I'm just going to continue coloring and tracing in the envelope design, and I was trying to add a little bit more of that white chalk paint in the areas where I got like a little too much of that paint marker. And just like I did with the first two, I'm just going to go ahead and trace over the outlines using my black Sharpie, and then writing in some words to the inner lining of the envelope. These envelopes are so adorable, and I've had them for quite some time and never really knew what to do with them until now. So the next step after painting and tracing all of these envelopes, I will remove those little sticks that they are attached to, because there's no need for that part since I wasn't going to be sticking this into anything. I took my miter shears and this was super easy just to cut through. Next, it was time to start arranging all of my decorative pieces to this frame. I decided on how I wanted to lay all of these envelopes. I thought this was a cute design right here. I also am using that XOXO piece of galvanized sign that came with the frame. And I took this pack of Valentine, sort of some type of material, but they come in different colors and 2 different sizes. And I thought that they would make a nice accent to the area where that little heart was drawn in to the envelope. And again, just adding some texture and dimension to this piece. I think those are super fun. I hot glued down the XOXO galvanized metal piece, and then I started to arrange all of my envelopes the way I wanted them. And once I was happy, I went ahead and hot glued down those envelopes in that fashion right there. And already this is looking so cute. And adding that little foamy hearts right there. It's not really foam, but it's like sort of a puffy fabric material. I just added it to the center, and this is how it came out. Super adorable. For the last DIY of this video, I am making another sign using another Dollar Tree picture frame. This one is one of those with a jute twine and some clothespins. I just removed all the elements on here. The paper was super easy to come off. I was thrilled about that. I didn't have to, do much work. It literally peeled right off, and I took off that twine and the clothespins. I'll use that for a later project. And the first thing I did here was painted over that cardboard backing using the steel colored chalk paint. And this is by Waverly. This is a nice light gray color. Just gonna go ahead and paint this up a couple good coats just to give it good coverage. And it's so much fun making these Dollar Tree frames look completely different, just adding your own touch to it. I think the simplest ideas and simplest makeovers, it makes a big difference, if you just create it in a way that's more personalized. So here I'm taking this pack of these are stamps. These are like the Crafter Square rubber stamps, and I'm just gonna apply this over the background just as a whole piece. I went back and forth deciding, do I want to use only certain images and paint them in random areas, or do I want to just use the whole thing as a background? I'm testing out the stamps using this Versa mark. It's from Joann's, and it's just like a watermark type of ink. So if you're not familiar with ink pads, watermark is just basically like a clear ink pad that leaves like a very faint image in the background. It's not colored or anything. It's just a watermark. So I'm not really sure if this step was actually necessary, because it really didn't make or break the project. Like, it didn't do anything for it, in my opinion. But, I wanted to test it out and see if it would add anything. And here I'm just showing you how it looks. I'm not sure if you can actually see it. It's just like a faint design mark in the background. For the next step, I'm using some of these rub-on transfers. This has the key design on it and perfect for Valentine's. I grabbed these from, I believe it was possibly from Big Lots some time ago, and I've had them for a really long time and never really did anything with them, but they're super pretty and they're just really cute. They're right up my alley. I love like keys, birds, and you know, all those things. And I thought this would be a perfect addition to this picture frame here, and again, for a Valentine style decor. So this is going to be more of like a neutral Valentine decor that can work for everyday decor as well. And I'm simply just going to cut out all of those keys and then just rub them and burnish them onto the cardboard backing and all along the outer edges just to decorate that area. And then that same heart that I used for the previous DIY, those little fabric hearts, I'm going to use those to embellish the keys, and you'll see that here shortly. For the final step on this project, I'm taking those little hearts, the fabric hearts from Hobby Lobby, just picking out the colors I wanted to use. I went back and forth if I wanted to use pink, white, and red, or if I wanted to just do two colors. I opted for red and white, just like this, and then just hot glued those hearts right on top of those keys, and I think that was definitely what it needed to complete the look. This frame came out super adorable. I did paint up that little clothespin that came with a frame in the same steel colored chalk paint, and then I did hot glue that back to the center just so that it had a way of holding up a photo. So that does it for this video. I want to take this time to thank you guys for being here. Thanks for watching and your continued support. Please give me a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I will catch you in my next video.